So long time ago, when Fanx was in its second year, they put me in this room, and it felt really, really daunting because, I had some people in the front, but not very many. Finally, years later, we've said, we think Brandon's ready to go back to the big room. So here we are. Thank you. I love you too, random citizen. They actually said that we have the biggest crowd, so we beat out the hobbits. So here's what I'm going to do today. And those of you coming in, I'm waiting to start till you find a seat, so don't worry. So I only have 37 minutes left. So we'll do this, we'll make sure that we do this relatively quickly. But there's 3 parts. First off, I actually brought some slides for you to show off some cool things like some art that we got coming up and things like that. I figured if I've got the big stage, I should prepare a little bit more. So we'll be showing off some preview art from Stormlight 5, some things from upcoming Leatherbounds, stuff like that. And then we'll do a brief Q&A. And then I will do a reading for you, from Stormlight 5. I have specifically picked a passage that is not going to be too spoilery if you haven't read the Stormlight series. So if you have, then this is a very, very side character. You may even have to go back and reread to figure out even who this is that I'll be reading about. But we've got a little cameo interlude from somebody that has only appeared in an interlude in the past. And I'll do a reading for you on that. It's pretty short, okay? I'm going to get started, though those of you who are still on your way in, it's totally fine. Find your seats. I just want to start off by showing off some of this art. So let's see if my clicker works. The first thing that I wanted to show you, we have the end pages for Wind and Truth. We're going to post these on our website after this panel if you want to get close-up pictures. The end pages for the Stormlight Archive have been kind of an interesting thing because a lot of people look at them and they're like, what even are these? I had this idea when we were doing the early books of having the end pages be people from mythology in the Stormlight world. And so most of them have been heralds so far. As if painted by a great master like Michelangelo, sort of their interpretation. So our end pages are going to involve 2 heralds, and we've got also cultivation and honor here at the center. So you'll be able to go see those, get close-up views on those. I think you'll enjoy having a look at those as they go through. We have Donato as one of our painters for these, and I am really, really pleased with how they look. You'll want to get the close-ups. The one of Taln has been hanging in my front room for several years, so I'm very pleased to show you those. We do a lot of work on our art, and we're really happy that you guys support us in these sorts of things. We have Wind and Truth, something you guys have been asking for a lot. We do our book bundles, right? So when you buy the book, you can buy from us the book bundle that comes with a signed copy and with things. This year we have a Chol plushie that comes with it. That's our Chol plushie. First look at our Chol. Lots of people have been asking for the Chol plushie. You guys always surprise me. Like, I got a question earlier, I think it was yesterday, where someone was like, did you expect the stick to become the thing that would be the meme? And I'm like, no, I did not put that in there for meme potential. I just did the stick because it worked in the scene, and then suddenly it becomes the meme. Well, we were kind of surprised that what do people want? People want a Chasm Fiend, people want a Chiri Chiri, but the number one we get asked for is a Chol. So you're all weirdos, but we have your Chol plushie. We will get around to Chasm Fiends and Cheery Cheery eventually, but we started with our Chol. So let's see. I also wanted to walk you through how some of our art gets made. We have the Leatherbound for Bands of Mourning is our other release this year, and what you can see is we will commission a piece. So this is a piece where Steris has a very large gun on the top of a train and is not quite expecting what it does to her when she fires it. We will get from our illustrator, we will get, 8 thumbnails of kind of different takes on this. In fact, this is actually usually the second thing that we'll get. First, we'll get a whole bunch of different takes on the poses, and then we refine into this. And you can see that we pick one of them, and then what we do is we refine that. And this one, Steris she looked a little too awesome. Steris has never fired a gun like this before, and so if you can see this, we have them change the face to be more as Steris might be in these sorts of situations. And then we have the final one where we refine this. And so what happens with me is I'm seeing these every Thursday at my art review, where Isaac, who's my VP of art, will bring all these things in and say, all right, which of these do you like? Which ones are working? What do we need to tweak? And I'm like, that one is really cool, but Steris would not be looking like, oh, I'm so cool firing this gun. She'd be like, oh, what do you do to make this thing go? Oh, it went. So that'll be one of the color pieces in the Leatherbound. I think they put up there. Yeah, Bands of Mourning, Leatherbound coming up. So yeah. Speaking of that, just to make you aware, if you didn't watch my weekly update, we decided that we didn't like Black Friday. We've decided to reject Black Friday and Cyber Monday because that's a holiday weekend. And it's never sat well with me that you get to have a nice holiday for like an hour and then you have to go prepare for Black Friday, or, we would only do Cyber Monday, but still would require all of my team to get things ready over the weekend. And so we reject that and we came up with our own. Yeah. I hope that others will follow, right? Because it is ridiculous that we expect retail people to go to work on Friday after Thanksgiving and things like that. Yeah, those in retail are like, well, yes, please. So we're starting October 29th. We're calling it Light Day that kicks it off. And that's just when our holiday sales begin instead. And they will last for like a good month. They'll have the exact dates up for you. But with this, it has it right. No, it begins the 29th. And so the idea being that we'll give you plenty of time to look at the sales and things like that. Kara, I'm sorry if I got something wrong. I see her over here on the light. But that way, my team doesn't have to really worry about the holiday weekend so much. And they have a busy week coming up the week or so after when we do Dragonsteel Nexus. So anyway, you can watch out for that. I get a lot of questions about our headquarters and things like this. I have a kind of shockingly large operation now. I don't know. On one hand, I'm proud that I have like these 60 people working for me. They are awesome. They do a really good job. On the other hand, I'm like, that's a lot of people so that a doofy guy can sit in his basement and write books. Yeah. Now suddenly there's this always somebody to do something if I need something done. So that is really handy. We moved into new offices. We actually leased some warehouse space there in Pleasant Grove. You can't visit it. So we thought we'd show you pictures of it. We're all getting ready and putting up. This is where we are. We will eventually have a place you can visit. We don't have anyone on front desk at reception or anything. It's mostly just office space and warehouse. But we're pretty excited that we all, for a while, people were working out of my basement and then out of the house next door after we bought it, and then out of like 3 different little office spaces. We now have everybody in one place, which means that even I end up going there rather than writing just in my basement. Once in a while, I'm at HQ. We will eventually have Dragonsteel Plaza, right? Yeah. We bought land next to Evermore. I did not buy Evermore. That's Brandon Fugel, not Brandon Sanderson, who was involved in that. Lots of people reporting, Sanderson buys Evermore. No, I'm not that dumb. Oh, did I say that out loud? No, but we have land next door. We really like the people who bought Evermore. We're hoping they'll do some really cool things with it. We're going to theoretically build a bookstore next door in that strip of land right on North County Boulevard. So you can, if you feel like visiting it, you can, but it is a patch of weeds. Eventually, we will get that going and things like that. So there's just a QR code. This is the end of the slides for things that are coming up. And my plan is at future FanXs to do something like this, where we've got just some announcements. We'll refine the process. I know it was a little hard to see the art. We were worried about that when we made the slides. We'll figure out how we can do that. But that's kind of my goal for future years here at FanX, is just bring you a little thing, show off some art, show off what we've got going on and things like that. And as we make progress on things like Dragonsteel Plaza, we will let you know at things like this. So. There you are. We can kill the slides, whoever's back there watching them. We're going to go to the Q&A portion, and I'm going to do this for about 15 minutes, all right? And then I'll do the reading. If you really want to leave for the reading, even though it's not that spoilery because you don't want to be spoiled at all, that is okay. I will not be offended at all. But right now, we've got only one mic right here in the front, and we're going to be taking take questions from that. I will add to the list of rules they gave for questions, try not to spoil anything. I know it's hard, but if you can circumlocute around something that might be a spoiler or something like that, we would really appreciate it. And we have a Mistborn here right at the front for us.
Yeah, you might not recognize me with this on. Question for you, Brandon. How many different types of investiture can somebody use simultaneously? Because we know there are characters that are gathering different investitures.
Yes.
And then also I need to show you my shirt.
Oh, very nice. I like the shirt. Very nice. Did you... do you have a pin for that already? That costume?
Do I have what?
A cosplay pin for that costume?
I do not.
Oh, well, Becky, will you deliver a cosplay pin? If you come through one of my signing lines or things in a costume, we have the cosplay pin for you, so you do have your mist cloak on. All right. So how many different kinds of investiture can a person theoretically use? Well, Adon Alsim used them all at once, so it's theoretically possible to use them all. They interfere with each other, and it becomes increasingly difficult the more that you add. And that's all I'll say right now. Thank you for the question. Hey, how you doing, little Ghostbuster?
I'm doing good. My question is, if you could have the Brandon Alcatraz Medjugorje's breaking talent, what would you do first?
What would I do first? If I had Alcatraz's breaking talent? Oh, I've never been asked that before. It's an excellent question. What would I do first? Let's see, what can I break that would be really, really, really cool to break? Let's see. I would do something like really weird. Like I'd try to break the water in a cup and see if I could get hydrogen and oxygen out of it. That would be really cool. I'd try to do that. I'd see how far I could push the talent and how far I could bust it. If it really is Alcatraz's power, I would accidentally break everything I don't want to break, and I wouldn't be able to break the thing that I want, so it probably wouldn't go well for me. But first, I'd try to see if I can pull off nuclear fission, and at that point, I might be scared of what I could potentially accomplish.
Hello, Hello, Brandon. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
My question is, as an aspiring author, I know how your own characters can surprise you while writing. So my question for you was, especially during Stormlight, but in any of your books, which characters have surprised you the most by the direction they went, how they changed the plot, etc.?
Excellent question. So the way I kind of view this as an author is, I'm a heavy outliner, but I always give the characters volition, right? I don't know a character until I've seen through their eyes, and as I write, things change. I would say Adolin is the most surprising, right? Well, there's some Adolin stands in the crowd. Adolin was not meant to be a main character and did not have any viewpoints as I was originally planning the Stormlight Archive. And as you can see from the books, he has a lot of them. And so Adolin is the big surprise of Stormlight. I will say, oftentimes, I was actually talking about to some people in the line just recently. Characters will reach a point of decision. And at that point, the outline usually will say that has them do this, but I will have written them for months at that point to be who they are at that point, and I give them the opportunity to make different decisions. And someone at the end of Wind and Truth made the opposite decision. Meaning, this isn't like it's not like magical where I'm like, oh, the character's alive. No, it's just that who I wrote them to be and how the themes of the plot progressed, I realized at that point, they can't make this decision. And so I rewrote their part and revised to have the opposite decision get made. And so once Wind and Truth is out, I can tell you what that is. But you'll have to read it and see if you can guess who in the outline was making a very different decision. Hello, another Mistborn. Do you have a pin?
I do not.
Oh, Becky, we need another pin. So this is, eventually we'll move to another pin. We'll have a series of cosplay pins and the idea is you can get those from me by coming through one of my lines or asking a question or something in costume.
Well, thank you.
My costumes. I love that you're in a Harry Potter costume, but you'll have to find someone else to give you a pin for that.
So going back to Alcatraz, one of my favorite series, would be a great TV series.
I think so as well.
I heard a story, and I don't know if this is true, that you were given like a challenge and they gave you 3 random items and you had to make it into a book. Is that how Alcatraz came to be?
So it's not quite, but it's close. So nobody gave me them, but I was enjoying watching Whose Line Is It Anyway at the time, and I thought, can I do this myself? And I somewhere found, I went to my writing group, and I said, all right, throw things at me to be the items that I need to use for this given book. I can't remember which one it was, like 2 or 3. And they just threw things at me, and I wrote them down, and I used them all, just like a Whose Line sort of thing. So that was one of the books. I think it was number 2, because, the I Am a Fish thing came from that. So, yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Hello. So, first of all, my daughter here is named after Vin.
Well, nice to meet you, Vin.
But my question, avoiding most spoilers, are the dragons of the Cosmere compatible with the current investiture systems you've introduced, or would they even care to use them?
So when you talk about dragons in the Cosmere, there's generally 2 kind of branches. So the dragons from Yolen are kind of, if you can imagine their inspirations being a little bit along the lines of Tolkien elves. They predate humans, they are very long-lived, and they act like deities to people. People actually pray to them, and they can respond through the bond by sending something very equivalent to a soothing or a rioting to those prayers, to those who follow them, to bolster them, give them courage, or to take away their fear or things like that. They are one kind of style of dragon. You will find dragons that are on other planets that have been created in their image, so to speak, that don't have some of those deific powers and things like that. And so it really depends. Is the answer. The dragons, the Yolen dragons, are not really interested in other investiture. They're highly invested themselves And most of the magic systems they wouldn't be able to use, in the same way that trying to push or pull on a shard blade wouldn't do anything because of the high levels of investiture. They just are already so full, if that makes sense, that they would not be able to use most of them. What you might call the lesser dragons, they could, theoretically. Uh-huh. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, good. Hi, Brandon. Thank you for being here, obviously.
My pleasure.
I was wondering, with how much research you've done into mental illness and how much it's affected the Stormlight archives, even memes like, people saying if I was in that world, I would definitely be a Radiant. How much has that affected the relationships that you have with the people around you, having that better understanding?
I sure hope that it has been helpful, right? What it does is it puts pressure on me, right? One of my children has depression, and I'm like, I have to be the dad who understands this and does it well, because if I'm not, then there are millions of fans that get on my case, right? In some ways, it's really helpful. But in other ways, I'm like, I now have to put these things that I have learned and talked about into application. And that's actually kind of terrifying, right? Where it's like, I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't try to be, right? But I'm a dad, and I want to be understanding. I want to be helpful. You also have to go to school. So how do you balance that as a dad and make sure, and these sorts of things? I think it has been helped. That would really be a question for my family members, and be like, does he do a better job? The thing about it is like, I want to understand people. That's one of the main reasons I became a writer, is I want to understand what it is to be outside of my head. And that's the real sort of challenge for me, is understanding. And I hope it helps me. But I don't get to say if I'm good at it or not. I just get to say I'm trying. Mm-hmm.
So my question is as we know, many characters in Stormlight have gone through ups and downs and that kind of stuff, but there's one character that has kind of progressed one way. So
yes.
Is there any good thing you can say in this next book about Moash?
What can I say about Moash? I can say Moash makes an appearance. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but he does make an appearance. That's what I'll say. Thank you for the question. Hey, Luke.
Hi, Brandon. How are you doing?
Doing all right.
I also enjoy the world's okayest birthday, December 19th. My question is about ruin and preservation,
yes.
Creating life. Now, is that an example of two individuals having a super team up, or is there some co-influence, cross-influence that let them do something that would be outside of themselves?
All right, wait, rephrase that for me. Talk around a little bit. Let me see if I'm going to get the right answer, okay?
Well, ruin,
yeah.
and preservation, preserves.
Yeah.
If they're creating life, well, that takes a little of everything,
yeah.
Right? Now, is that an influence like ruin being in proximity to preservation,
okay.
And vice versa? Would there commingling happen? And how would that influence other dual or triple shard?
Right,
systems?
okay, I get what you're saying. So each of the shards has certain strengths and weaknesses, right? And they're capable of certain things and not other things. Some of them can do what was done by ruin and preservation on their own. Most cannot. Most combinations of two could. Some would need three. And so it really kind of depends on the situation and the shard. Each kind of pairing and grouping of shards will have different augmentations to what they can accomplish and things like this, because the shards aren't all powerful. They're just part of something that once was, if that makes sense. So that's not how math works in Infinity, but it is how Infinity works in the Cosmere.
All right. My question is that did Vasher ever have a sibling who was a scholar or was notable in any way?
RAFO.
All right.
I'll give you a RAFO card, though, if you want one. So our first RAFO of the day, well done. For those who don't know, RAFO is something I inherited from Robert Jordan. It means read and find out. It means I don't want to answer yet for various reasons. Hey, how you doing?
Hello. I was wondering, like, as a writer, have you ever, like, doubted yourself? And if so, what did you do?
What an excellent question. The answer is yes. I think every writer has, right? I've had it multiple times. Every time a book comes out, there is a part of you that says, well, this is the one that's going to end your career, Sanderson. No one's going to like this one, you know, like, and there is some, you know, reinforcement of that in, I'm in entertainment, right? And sometimes that happens. It hasn't happened yet, but there's nothing I can do about that, right? I have to follow what I want, the stories I want to tell, and hope that it continues to work. There is a time, the bigger moments of doubt were when I was unpublished. I had written 12 novels and I hadn't sold any. And I was getting a lot of questions about, what are you gonna do with your life? 10 years writing books and no one buying them. Maybe that's a hint, right? And I've told this story before, I won't go on at length, but the thing that really changed my mindset then was realizing I wasn't writing the books necessarily because I wanted to be a famous author. I was writing the books because I had stories I needed to tell. And I realized that if I reached my deathbed and I had finished writing 100 novels and I loved doing it, then that was a success. And that's the bigger bar of success. Like, there is another bar to become a pro and then becoming a bestseller, but the biggest hurdle is doing it. And I felt like if I did that, I was successful. And I made that decision. It took a whole bunch of weight off of me. And you can see, I think that's been one of my sort of superpowers as a writer, is I got to make that decision before I sold anything. I have friends who sold books and hadn't yet kind of had that decision process. And so suddenly being out there and having to write while published was super difficult for them because they hadn't already kind of gotten over this idea of what happens if people don't like my books. I had that, you know what, if it happens, it happens. I'm still gonna write, and that's been really helpful to me. So I hope that you'll be able to find some moment yourself. All right, this has to be the last question. I'm sorry to those in line. Maybe you'll be able to get me another time, but I do want to get to the reading, so this is our last question.
Hi.
Hi.
Can Marsh Bond a spren?
Can Marsh Bond a spren? This is possible, but it would require a little bit of a dance, but not a huge one. He could do it. Yeah, I think Marsh could figure it out without too much trouble.
Which one?
Well, that would depend on which one's willing, right?
Fair enough.
I could fit Marsh into several different orders depending on how things went with him, all right? It's a good question. I'll give you a RAFO card for that. It's a half RAFO.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So thank you all for your awesome questions. You always have great ones for me. I am now going to go to the reading, all right? So, like I said, this shouldn't give you spoilers even too much for Stormlight 5, even though it's kind of in the middle of it because it's an interlude. If you really don't want, then that is totally fine. Once again, I will not be the least bit offended. But I am going to read to you about Baxil. Most of you are like, I've read that book. Who is Baxil? Baxil is from one of the interludes. It's where you first meet Ash. It's told from his viewpoint in an earlier Stormlight book. He was following her along through a palace, and now it's been several years later. We're going to find out what's up with Baxil. Baxil trod the streets of Azamir unseen. Every inch of him, save his eyes, was wrapped in tight crimson cloths, the tied-off tails of which sometimes escaped his cloak and waved in the wind of an unknown current. Hand on his guitar slid into its sheath at his side. He watched for anyone in the crowd who could notice him. Nothing so far. Good. This was a city haphazardly prepared for war. Baxel strode through the camp, which had taken the place of the Grand Market. The soldiers camped in concentric rings that he was certain they thought were evenly spaced with smooth curves. Not a soul saw him. These days, people could only see Baxel if they were looking for him, and he could only touch them if they were trying to kill him. He left the camp, and for old time's sake, whispered a prayer to the prime catechist. If you could see that I get what I deserve, I would appreciate it. Thanks. Azemir was famed for its tea shops, which filled the same niche that wine houses did in the East. By this point, Baxel had sampled a wide variety of both and had his favorites. Here in Azemir, one shop in particular was known for its discretion. They had instructions to watch for him. So, as he entered, the bouncer by the door leapt to his feet. "Master Crimson," he said, "we got your note." "As well you did," Baxel said, "or we might not be able to have this conversation." "He's here?" "He is, Master," the bouncer said, ushering him in further. "And he's an odd one." "You don't know the half of it, Ulak," Baxel said, tipping him a few spheres, which became real as he dropped them. "See that we're not interrupted." Baxel entered the private room, separated from the rest by hanging beads, and walked through an invisible cloud of incense to approach the luxurious table, one of the most exclusive in the city. There, Axes the Collector was seated, passing the time by hitting his hand with a small hammer. "Surely you have Painspren by now," Baxel said, sliding into the booth across from the Aeamian. Axes preferred to wear little in the way of clothing, in part because he kept his notes on his skin in the form of tattoos. An entire book, secured in a place where he could never lose it. Like all of his kind, he could change the color of any part of his skin at will. "I have Painspren, yes, of course," Axes said. "I've had them for millennia, Crimson memory. But you see, we are in the builder's quarter of the city, where men frequently hammer. There's a curious report from 152 years ago of a peculiar spren drawn to the pain of men who have hit their fingers with a hammer while aiming for a nail. If one were to search for that specific spren, this would be the place." "And you believe this report?" Baxel asked. "Hardly," Axes said. "It was almost certainly a joke." He then hit his hand with the hammer. He winced, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. "Tell me honestly," Baxel said, leaning forward. "You enjoy the punishment, don't you?" "What kind of deviant would enjoy this?" Axes said. Then hit his thumb square on with the hammer. "Then why?" "Pain is fleeting. The thrill of accomplishment is eternal." Smack. "Yes, almost certainly a joke." "If the prime catechist should allow," Baxel said, relaxing on his bench, resting one arm across the top, "I should someday like to understand you." "At least I," Axes said as the cups arrived, "can taste my tea." He took a sip from his, then eyed Baxel from over the rim. Baxel signed, but did as expected. He held his hand out over the tea, feeling the heat of the steam, and imagined. People throughout the tea house enjoyed their drinks, especially the stark black Jeremon tea, as they provided for him. Bitter, sharp, like drinking the venom of something aggressive. This was tea that fought back. Such things had a life of sorts, not the individual cup so much as the concept of tea. With this many people thinking about it, savoring it, contemplating it, Baxel could taste it and remember what it had been like to drink during a time that seemed so distant, yet so familiar all at once, before his blessing and before his curse. Today, a great number of people thinking about the same thing let him feel the bitter tea on his tongue as he sat with his hand over the cup. "You're sure you're not a spren?" Axes asked. "I'm putting you in the appendix regardless, you understand." Baxel smiled. "You brought my bandages?" Axes placed them on the tabletop, red wraps, prepared in the most special of ways as Baxel needed. The key to his survival. In turn, he placed a gemstone on the table. He was not a spren, but they did find him fascinating. Axes snatched it up and peered at the little spren inside. "Better to find them in the wild," he mumbled, "but this will have to do. Little friend, how elusive you've proven." Baxel took the bandages and slid them into the pocket of his cloak, then rose from his seat. "She's here in Azemar, by the way," Axes noted. "She?" "Your old employer. the Herald, Shalash. He'd known her only as mistress during another life, had been rather infatuated with her, and maybe had never stopped. How? He asked. I thought she was at the Tower City. No, she went with the Alethi army on campaign, Axie said, still inspecting his gemstone prize. I think their king wanted to interview her. At least that's the impression I got when I chatted with her. They took the other one, too, the big fellow, to the fight for Emul. They're back now, though, tucked away in an Asia's hospital. I believe her king has mostly forgotten about her. Here, in the hospital, he could go see her. Baxel pulled his cloak tight. No, not like this. Best get out of the city, Axies, he said. I think dark times are coming to Azamir in the days ahead. Yes, Axie said. I concur. Axie would stay, of course, hunting the rare spren of enraged passions during war. Well, the Amian had proven resilient, while Baxel himself always felt like he was one calm breeze away from dissipating, like smoke from a dead fire. So, one hand on his guitar, he left a few spheres on the table as payment and continued on his quest, hoping that someday he might be able to enjoy the simple pleasure of sipping tea once again. And there we are. So I think they want to do one of those photograph things. Do we got the photograph person? They've been doing these at Fanx. They look really cool, so we're going to grab one. So what we want you to do is turn the flashlight on your phone. Yeah, some of you have done that. Who's going to take the picture? Octavia? Or no, we got you guys. You guys are going to do it.
All right, guys. On the count of 3, you guys are going to go nuts. Oh, fill it all the way up. Turn your flashlights on and fill them all the way up. Oh, my goodness. Look at all the stars there, Brandon. All right, guys, on the count of 3, I want you to go nuts. Ready? 1, 2, 3! Please, guys, give a huge round of applause, everybody, for Brandon Sanderson!